Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Outside the Studio. I wish I had a drum roll. Maybe we can find a drum roll in the background. I want a drum roll for this one because I have so been looking forward to this conversation for, I'm not kidding, several months now. I am really excited to have this chat with Jolie Dawn. She's the author of Empowered, Sexy, and Free. And she's also the creator of the Dare to Prosper Challenge. This is the largest women's prosperity meditation gathering, which is online. It's attended by women in more than 50 countries. Jolie specializes in helping women awaken their prosperity consciousness, embody their deepest truth, and reclaim personal freedom and creativity. She's an intuitive business coach and writer. She currently contributes to Entrepreneur magazine, which I love. Oh, it's such a cool magazine. And she has written 6 best-selling self-published books. She is the founder of Prosperity Queendom Inc., an online business training platform for spiritual entrepreneurs. Jolie has had thousands of hours of leadership and spirituality training in various modalities, including hypnosis. Cool, let's talk about that too. Unconscious reprogramming, Kundalini yoga, Theta healing, Reiki, and transmutation meditation. And Jolie, welcome to the show. You're currently joining us from Kauai. How's it going?
Or we say aloha out here.
Aloha. Yes.
I'm having a beautiful day. It's spring out here and we just made it through our rainy season. So it's beautiful. And I'm feeling the new growth, the fertility that comes with the end of spring here.
Yeah, amen to that. And being on a beautiful tropical island like Kauai, my uncle lives on Oahu actually. So yeah, I feel like in a way I can sort of be vicariously there with you. I've traveled to Hawaii a few times, but Kauai is not an island I've ever visited. Is it fairly different from Oahu, Maui?
It's very different. It's been very protected from tourism, and there's nothing built on this island over the size of a palm tree. So it's much more difficult to find hotels and rentals, and it's much more expensive to travel here because it's high demand, low supply.
Yeah. Well, so that must make it like a little retreat for you.
It's a little retreat. I found this house. I'm living on 5 acres of private land. And in my back gate, beyond all the fruit trees, back gate opens up to 500 acres of a nature preserve with
Uh-huh.
waterfalls and wild horses and the largest mahogany tree farm in North America. It's absolutely magical.
Oh,
It's a dream. If somebody saw my backyard, they'd just be like, how, what? It's
mahogany
amazing.
trees are one of my favorite. I love the bark. It's so
Yes.
pretty. Ah, that sounds magical. Well, before we started to record, you were telling me about your nomadic lifestyle,
Mhm.
which it sounds like you kicked it off during the pandemic, and you've been kind of traveling and sort of pseudo hanging out in Kauai for a bit, and now are heading to Europe soon on a one-way ticket.
Yes, yes, I'm in a nomadic lifestyle, which it's been the biggest test of my personality. The last real settled home that I had was in Los Angeles. I had this 3-story glass house in LA, and I had it completely designed like a production studio because I was producing a lot of content there and videos and lots of things. So I had it just immaculately designed. The whole house looked like it could be filmed at any moment. And it was so me fulfilling a childhood dream of like, wanting things to be really nice and high end because that's not the way that I grew up. And I, manifested this reality, had a very high rent experience in LA. And when the pandemic went down, a lot of things changed inside of me. And what I perceived as valuable changed. And I looked at all this stuff that I had. I was a person with a lot of stuff and accumulation. And I looked at it and I'm like, it just doesn't have the value. And actually, it feels like it's weighing me down. So I gifted everything I owned minus one suitcase. I didn't get a storage unit. I didn't store things and left LA with one suitcase and traveled around Mexico for an entire year.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's so
Whoa.
cool. Oh, I
Totally low.
love that. Was it terrifying? Was it thrilling? I mean, would you do it again? I mean, you're going to Europe.
It was amazing. I do speak Spanish, so I had that going for me, not fluently, but conversationally to get around. And it was a place that felt really free in a time when the rest of the world was not free. So I feel like I kind of hacked COVID because I found the one place in the world. I'm not sure how many places like Mexico were accepting travelers, and I never got sick, and no one around me ever got sick. And we were just doing the thing, living life, dancing, going to restaurants. And I just felt like I needed that for my mental sanity because it was really locked down in LA and they chain link fenced off the beach. And I understood everything that was happening. It wasn't like I was in some big conspiracy around it. It was just like, what do I need for my personal well-being during one of the craziest times on the planet? Mm-hmm. And freedom and some sense of normalcy is what I needed most. And I found that in Mexico.
Wow, cool. Well, what was your favorite? My partner's from Mexico, and it's somewhere we visit at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. I feel like I always tell him that I am a Mexican at heart, and he kind of laughs and rolls his eyes at me. But what was your favorite part of traveling around in Mexico? Did you have a favorite city? Anything like that?
The southern tip down there, the Mexican Caribbean and all the Yucatan and that whole underground river system that goes down through Tulum and into Valladolid and like all down there in the Yucatan is, I think, the most magical thing. And there's this little town called Valladolid. Have you heard of it?
No. Is this on the Yucatan?
Yeah, it's inland from the beach and it's so charming. It's so sweet. There's more private and less crowded cenotes, which is the underground water caves. And you swim in these caves and it's truly a spiritual rebirth. These have been used by the Mayan culture and ritual for thousands of years. And you can feel it. You can feel the waters and how purifying, and it kind of takes you into the underworld a bit. And I found these really private caves and swimming holes and this fresh underground water. And it's really sweet to go outside of Tulum because Tulum, a lot of them can be very crowded and even polluted. So you just go inland a bit, head east, and you'll find kind of these sweet spots.
Yeah, it's funny. It's one area I haven't really explored at all, aside from Isla Mujeres, on that side of the country. I haven't explored. So, but I've heard magical, amazing things, just like what you said. So I want to dive into so many different things. First of all, I'm curious about the process of self-publishing and also becoming a best-selling author of 6 books. I mean, that's not easy to do. Self-publishing in and of itself, I think is, at least in my experience, I self-published a book of poetry and it felt like a leap of faith. Like, okay, I'm not going to go through the traditional route. I'm going to take a chance on myself and do it through this kind of new way channel. But you've done that 6 times and also become a seller 6 times. So tell me about that process for you and kind of the decision making behind that. I'm curious about.
So there's 2 sides of me. One, I believe I'm a natural born marketer, just the way my creativity works. And it makes me really a good businesswoman. And I started studying marketing in undergrad and college and then studied internet marketing. So I came at it through the marketer's lens and I knew how to create things online and rally communities together. And it had been something that I was doing in my hometown of San Diego, which is creating live events for women. So I understood this model of creating hype and creating a happening online that you rally communities behind. And so I did have that background of the marketing knowledge. And at the same time, it was absolutely a total leap of faith in myself and takes a lot of self-belief and worthiness. And I believe it's so accessible. I mean, when in our past history on the planet did you have such access to on-demand shipping, printing and shipping like Amazon has created in this industry? And for many years, you had to go through a printing house and store copies of your books and then manually ship them out one by one as people place orders. And Amazon completely changed this entire industry and made it so accessible when they created their platform of Kindle Direct Publishing, was previously called Create Space. And when someone submits an order through Amazon, they print your book right there and then they ship your book right there. So gone were the days of storing inventory, which made it so accessible to so many people. So shout out to Amazon for being a huge part of building my career. And my first book happened when I started writing it when I was 24. I had just a very difficult entry point into this world. I grew up in a home with lots of chaos and addiction. And oh man, my sweet little sensitive soul went through it with the family that I was born into. And I believe that our family is always doing the best that they can. Our parents are always doing the best that they can. And a lot of really big things happened in my life, a lot of big things that I had to process, including my dad's choice to leave the planet and end his life when I was 20 years old. And that was huge to try to process my reality. And he and I were very close. My parents were married. We grew up in the same house. He wasn't some distant person in my life. He was very much involved in my life. And I went from having this strong, masculine provider energy to not one day. And it just impacted my mom greatly. And she was in a very deep depression where she stayed for 9 years and struggled with all different types of addiction issues and prescription pills and alcohol and emotional eating, all of the things. Mm-hmm. Had a very hard time finding peace with the situation and felt very heartbroken. And she passed when I was 29 and just simply didn't wake up one day. I believe she was successful at like willing herself not to live. And so I had this incredibly difficult home life that oftentimes felt like a secret. Like my friends could never know what I was going through. My college friends are like, I don't know how to support a friend who just lost their parent to suicide. Mm-hmm. Would you like some shots? Do you want to go out drinking? And I did a lot of numbing and a lot of coping through repeating a lot of addiction issues in my family. Fell into that trap. And then I saw the path in my early 20s. I'd gotten incredibly unhealthy. I got myself into a very sticky situation with my health. And I could see the path. If I continue running from my feelings and numbing and hiding and not wanting to do the deep emotional release work, my life is going to be very predictable. There is no success here. There's no winning here. This is living a really mediocre at best life. And that's just not the life that I wanted. I watched both of my parents not choose to live. My dad did it in a very abrupt way, and my mom did it in a more subtle way. But I've seen too close, way too up close, seeing a spirit not really fully inhabit a human body. And like you're living and breathing, but you're not fully here. And I just didn't want to do that. It didn't feel interesting to me to be half in on this life. And I found my spiritual journey in my early 20s and had a massive and rapid spiritual awakening through many different things, through studying with an Indian guru and really feeling the direct transmission of the divine, and learning meditation and having transcendental experiences, and even early use of psychedelics. I was a seeker in every possible way: sexual healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing. I can be a very intense person. Just threw myself at it in every angle. And I noticed my life was getting better and things were working, and I was attracting healthy relationships into my life, and I was growing. And so Empowered, Sexy, and Free, when I was 24, basically chronicled my journey of early awakening, of how I discovered myself and how I stopped the pattern of addiction in myself, and how I awakened to a life that can be magical. It can be prosperous. Things can go our way. We can enjoy the experience while we're here.
Wow, what an amazing story. It's always so interesting to me to hear about choices we make based on what our childhood experience or early adulthood / adolescence brings about, because you hear these stories about people who repeat that cycle and continue down the path of behavior that their parents modeled for them. And then there's people like you who their eyes are opened and they realize there's like this, it sounds to me like what you're describing, and I'd love to hear you expound upon this. There's this moment of choice or recognition or acknowledgement that there is a different way, or there is a better way. Did it feel like a moment for you? Did it feel like something clicked? Did it feel more gradual? And will you tell me a little bit more about that?
Totally. It was a health scare and a health emergency that I'd got into. And I had to have a major jaw reconstructive surgery based on some really bad choices that I made for my body. So I was just crazy. I loved to party. I loved it. And it was a sense of escapism for me. It was when I felt sexy. It was when I felt free. It was the thing that my friends did. And so I had some really hardcore party years. And in those hardcore party years, like right when I turned age 21, I got invited to go to the Electric Daisy Carnival in Las Vegas. And it was a huge, like the biggest rave in the world. And I actually wasn't so much in the rave scene, but I had a friend that was, and she bought tickets for my 21st birthday. So we got all our neon outfits, and the timing was really quite off because I had just gotten all 4 of my wisdom teeth out. And it happened to be that my lower left side was really impacted. It took like more of a surgery, and I had more healing time, and I wasn't fully healed before I went to this rave. And went on a total bender. I mean, every substance, mixing lots of things, truly not eating pretty much a single bite of food for 4 days, living on amphetamines, living on alcohol. And after that weekend, I started having pretty excruciating pain in my jaw. And what happened was over 3 months, I was in just debilitating pain, and the doctors just kept prescribing more prescription. So if you would have seen some early Facebook posts, I didn't have the capacity to be congruent with my emotions. I remember posting after my dad passed away and being like, I can't spend a minute being sad because I had such an amazing dad. And so I just really didn't have the capacity to be like, this is a sad moment for me and I am in grief. And it was just a lot of covering it up. And I thought that if I was just positive and happy all the time, that it would get me through life. And it was an effective strategy for a time, but not if you want to do the deep inner emotional work of healing. And so this is me. I'd walk into the dentist office where all of this is going down and talk to my doctor and be like, yeah, the pain is a lot, and I'm also doing great and I'm enjoying my life. And I always had a smile on my face. And so I wasn't being congruent with expressing like the level of absolute excruciating pain that I was in. And I landed in the emergency room because I had so many painkillers in my system to try to get rid of this, like just what felt like an ice pick was like shoved into my jawbone. It was just a level. I remember there were days that the only thing I could do was just stare at the pattern on the rug because I was just focusing on breathing through like moment to moment. It was so intense. And I couldn't explain that or describe that because I just didn't want to be the needy person that had needs. And I remember landing in the emergency room because all of the prescription pills were making like it hard to breathe, and I got scared, and I was like, okay, now I'm sounding the alarm, like I need to go to the emergency room and explain to somebody new what's going on. And so I finally had enough prescription pill or put like through an IV, like 3 rounds of Dilaudid in my system to be able to think clearly, because I just couldn't think clearly being in that much pain. So I'm in the emergency room. I go on my phone, best jaw surgeon in San Diego. I call him right there. And I was like, I am in a medical, I was very clear that time. I am in a medical crisis. I've been in excruciating pain for 3 months and no doctors believe me. And I was just cut off from my prescription pill that was flagged at the pharmacy for possible like abuse of these pills. And I cannot live my life without them. So he brings me in and he has finally somebody who has the right equipment that does a scan on my jaw. And what had happened is something that is so rare, which is an infection got into my bone, and my bone started to basically like was melting. My bone was melting and was pushing up against the nerve in my face. There's like a massive nerve that goes through. And he said to me, he's like, the only time I've ever seen a healthy American woman with a jaw issue this severely, or anybody with a jaw issue this severely, is because I do pro bono work in Africa where the tooth infections get so bad for so many years that it goes into the bone. But I've never in all of my time of being an oral surgeon seen this in somebody your age and somebody in this country. And he's like, I'm doing emergency surgery on you today. So I had to have massive jaw reconstruction where I still have nerve damage and numb sensations and a lot of scar tissue built up in this jaw. And after I got well, I was like, all I could think about was I did that to myself. I went on this crazy 4-day bender in Vegas with my friends, was so unkind to my body, didn't think to myself, maybe I should recover from surgery before I go to a rave. And I just had this reckoning moment with myself. I went into meditation and it was kind of like this voice of reason or this voice of my soul. And I truly believe my mission on the planet, like I just didn't come to mess around in this lifetime. And it was like my soul came through and was like, really, how do you want to play this, Jolie? Like, just take a look at your future if you continue treating your body this way and numbing and running.
Mm.
And I kind of made a deal with God in that moment of like, okay, I'm going to put my partying into check, and I'm going to make better choices for myself, and I'm going to start to touch on this inner pain that I am in, because I'm just running. And I had a little bit of runway, not much, and not definitely not enough to like set up my life, but a little bit of runway with money from my dad's passing to be able to invest in myself. So I was able to hire mentors and coaches, and I just went in. I went in and I started feeling all the things that I didn't want to feel from my childhood, and started to get to know myself in a big way. And I'll tell you that what I've been able to create in my life, the business that I run, I just hosted an online group of 4,000 women, and we just onboarded another 150 clients. Like the level and the scale of which I'm operating and the capacity for which I hold for other people just simply would not be possible if I hadn't done that deep emotional inner work to get to know myself intimately and to know my power and my gifts intimately.
Yeah. So that leads me to a question that I often ask of myself and others, which is, do you believe that you have to hit, and maybe this wasn't your rock bottom, but I'm wondering, do you believe that you have to hit rock bottom in order to make that commitment to do the spiritual healing, to do the emotional work, to look inward?
Mm.
Can it be just like you're having an okay life? Maybe things feel like they're kind of missing, things feel a little flat, but you feel like, okay, there's nothing really to complain about, but it could be better maybe. Or do we have to hit rock bottom?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it has to be a rock bottom. Maybe for some people, and everyone's journey is so different. But what I do think, what you're alluding to, is that there's got to be some reason for change. Like, why would you change your life, something that is bringing you the most fun and intimacy and connection that you know? Why would you change your strategies for living unless there was some sort of agitation that was calling for an upgrade? Like, why would you commit to a daily meditation practice for an entire year? Maybe it was because there was some agitation of not feeling deep inner peace. Maybe you were feeling insomnia. Maybe you're feeling anxiety. So there was something in your life that presented itself, that a new opportunity would open the doorway to a new future if you chose it.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with a lot of women who are working on creative projects. I work with women on their books and their businesses and their artistry and big projects that they're working on. And what I do notice is the central theme is when the stakes are really high and you want it bad enough, you have the fuel to create when something's on the line. And I felt it, my whole life was on the line. And so when we're connected to the stakes of the game, it oftentimes encourages more action.
Yeah. So I want to dive into some questions I have about the book. And I keep going back over and over again to chapter 1. It's the first paragraph. It's highlighted, underlined, and I keep rereading it and asking. You end this first paragraph with a question, which I'd love to read if it's okay with you.
Yes.
So as women, we are natural wild feelers. From the moment we start developing as young girls, we are sponges to our environment and the emotions of others around us. Can you remember the intensity and range of your childhood emotions? So I just want to take a beat, like allow listeners to ask themselves that question, to ponder this prose, and imagine yourself as a little child. And what happens for me when I think about this intensity and range of emotion in childhood is it puts me right back to 5 years old when my parents separated and I was raging all the time. And it was not okay. Anger was not okay. Tears were not okay. And I didn't have anyone to model that behavior to me in a healthy way. And I think it's no surprise that it shows up in my life where that's a challenge. Those are two challenging emotions for me to deal with to this day. And then it also makes me think of Clarissa Pinkola Estes' work. Are you familiar with her?
Oh, yeah.
Women Who Run with the Wolves, which is such a, oh, I just love that book. I love it for the stories, the mysticism, just listening to the sound of her voice, which is like honey. And this invitation as women, as girls, to rewild. You know, we are natural wild feelers. To rewild ourselves, to not domesticate so much, to not show up in a way that is appeasing to others. And you were speaking to this yourself, Jolie. So will you tell me a little bit more about this process of what I'm calling rewilding? And you're saying that as women, we are natural wild feelers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was raised by baby boomers. My parents were both in their 40s when they had me. And that generation and a lot of generations before had a lot of cultural programming here in the West around child and parent relationship and what was allowed to be expressed. And so I just look at my parents, they just simply didn't have the tools. It was children are to be seen and not heard. Children have no voice or opinion. And neither one of my parents had done their emotional work. So how could they hold space for a very emotional being? And, I've always been incredibly empathic and intuitive and can read the room and can get data on things very, very easily. So I was sensitive to my environment. And oftentimes I felt really alone in being able to express like things that had happened at school or mean girl shit that was happening and just like very complicated dynamics in my life that I didn't have the tools to process, and neither did my life coaches at the time, which were my two parents. Essentially, the people that are raising you are your life coaches for the first approximately 18 years of your life. And bless their hearts, I love those two people so much. And they're not two people who I would intentionally hire to train me on life school. They just aren't. They just aren't. They didn't have enough training for me to be, if the goal was to have a really empowered, deeply content nervous system, range of creative expression. And also I'm fully aware that at soul level, those were the exact people that brought me into this world so that I could have the life that I have. So I feel tremendously in acceptance and grateful around it. And in the book, I lay out 3 different stages of very important, significant emotional development, and specifically for women, the emotional development we go through. Ages 0 to 7, our beginning years on the planet, we do not know ourselves as separate from other. We don't know a sense of self. So we are absorbing our vibration, and the vast majority of our brain is getting developed at that age, 0 to 7 years old. We're very pliable. And this is where, if there is early childhood trauma, it gets stored in our system. I believe, and the point that I make in the book is that everything is healable. If you're willing to do the work, willing to get uncomfortable, willing to feel old feels and really excavate emotionally, you can open up a new future. But the reality of it is that the majority of people walking the face of the planet have a very unhealed inner children, and it comes out in none other than relationships with other people, and oftentimes in intimate relationships. So if chaos seems to be following you, if discord is following you, if drama in your life is following you, it's a really good opportunity to say to yourself, how can I do more inner child work? I feel like this should be a question that we're talking about in such a mainstream level. It's like, wow, I'm noticing that I'm getting triggered with the same friend repeatedly, and I can't seem to find resolution with this. Like, I'm going to do a little bit of excavating in here I'm going to take full responsibility of what's showing up in my world around me. I'm going to do a little bit more excavating into my nervous system and understand why this is putting me in such fight or flight. So we're growing rapidly in our awareness of this. I believe that it is becoming more mainstream to have a therapist, to do deep emotional work. And at the same time, there's a lot of people don't know how to access the tools. And the promise of the book and going through and understanding these levels of emotional development is you can have any future you desire. part of the agreement of coming into planet Earth is you would have a sovereign human body, sovereign human soul. And while being here, you can actually create anything that your mind can conceive, and beyond what you're even capable of conceiving, you can create. It's the great creation canvas of being here. And oftentimes it doesn't feel like we have free will. It doesn't feel like we have sovereign choice, because our inner child is running the show, and our inner little girl is scared, and she feels left out and abandoned and hurt by life. And when our safety is threatened, it's hard to feel peaceful inside and to feel in yourself, there's nobody else I'd rather be. There's no life I'd rather be living. This creation is mine. This is my artistry. This is exactly how I like it. This relationship that I'm in is the most inspiring relationship that I know in my life. My work is the most inspiring that I know. And to actually take responsibility for your life in that way, like everything will feel the best that I can. It won't be perfect all the time. That's not what the human experience is. But I want it to be close to a 10 out of 10. I want to feel a 10 out of 10 in my home environment. I want to love waking up here. I want to love my relationship, mutually beneficial, harmonious, same commitment to an empowered life. And I believe that people give up on themselves really easily because it's too easy to create the evidence that it's not possible, because we've been let down so many times, because we've tried and failed. And so the 3 stages of emotional development gives a window and exercises into how can we go back and retrieve our inner 8-year-old the day that our parents separated. How can I retrieve my inner 14-year-old, the one that was so scared that she got her menstrual cycle and didn't know how to make sense of it? How can I reclaim my inner 18-year-old who didn't feel well equipped for the world and had low self-esteem? And that's the foundation from which our entire adult life is built.
Yeah. Well, and you dive into the cycle of 7 in this chapter in particular, and I'm wondering a couple things. One, the significance of the number 7. It's actually my favorite number. It feels very mystical. I'm sure there's some numerology behind that, in many different cultures, traditions, beliefs. But there's this chapter, I mean, you don't have to explain it all. Of course, I'd much rather recommend that people pick up the book and read it for themselves. But will you talk to me a little bit more about the cycle of 7?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have the book with me here. So I started researching this 7-year cycle. It was coming up in a lot of bodies of work. And I think it's towards the beginning here. Reflecting on yourself. I started, here it is. It shows up in, it's like all over nature in 7 cycles, 7 oceans and 7 continents and 7 vertebrae in our back. And of course, we know the Christian story of the world was created in 6 days. We rested on the 7th. The 7th day of the week is the time to go inward and reflect the sacred power of completeness, completion of a cycle. It shows up in Buddhism. Aristotle mentions it, Greek mathematics. It's all over in economics, these economic cycles. The Gene Keys, which is a body of work that I've been studying for many years, sees this developmental cycle. And so ages 0 to 7 is all about personal power and safety. 7 to 14 is femininity and your belief about your own womanhood. And 14 to 21 is your freedom, your core beliefs about your place in the world. And so there's a very real cycle that we follow, the same cycle of nature, which is a major developmental milestone. And the book really breaks down the first 3, 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. So will you tell me in your bio, what exactly is Theta healing?
Yes, Theta is a brainwave that invites the body into deep relaxation. So we're in Theta brainwave when we're meditating or when we're sleeping, and it's a slower, inactive brainwave. And if we can, it's used in a therapeutic setting, if we can get a client to relax the thinking brain, we can access the unconscious mind, where the vast majority of the data is stored in our unconscious mind, to break through to a new future. And we can excavate data. We can excavate beliefs. And so it's like someone comes to me, is like, Jolie, I don't know why for 6 years in my business, I cannot get to 6 figures of revenue. And I try, and I have all this trauma around launching, and I want to do this thing, and it just feels impossible. Where am I going to get the clients? And if we're able to go into a quiet place, because the mind just spins out. We can't really create a new future when the mind is in that survival state and we're triggered and we're in lack consciousness. We've got to get the body into a place of deep relaxation and safety and just say, what is really happening here? There's something happening. It's not just because you're an unlucky person or people don't like you. There's a belief system of just, I'm not worthy for this. And I discovered this with my client. She knew that her dad worked his entire life, just 60 hours a week, enslaved to make a 6-figure revenue. And in her unconscious mind, surpassing 6 figures, doing what she loved, was betraying the family. In some way, that's what she believed. It was betraying his hard work. It was outperforming him. And in her unconscious mind, it's like, I cannot outperform my dad. So finding these little things of just like these blocks that we are living is just like, she had a conflicting belief, which is, I want to make 6 figures. And also I can't make 6 figures because it would mean all of these things.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And then at the point of recognition, it feels like, okay, I know this, then what? Is it enough to just know? You must have to take some action after that.
Exactly. Awareness is the first step, and it actually is the biggest step, because most everything that's blocking us is just below our awareness. Oftentimes people are in an argument with a friend, and rarely does somebody have this level of awareness, like, wow, I'm really taking responsibility for how I've trained this friend to treat me. And it has been many months of not honoring my boundary. And I can really see where this is an internal job of honoring a boundary and why this chaos is showing around me. It's not really how people relate to it. They're like, screw this person. She did this to me. She did that to me. I'm the victim and she's the perpetrator. And it's so tempting to make ourselves the victims to other people. And there's just no power in that. There's no power. And so when these things are showing up around me, I indulge sometimes. I'm like, I'm the victim to this. How could she? And how could they? And like, obviously I'm in the right. And how do I possibly grow if it's constantly somebody else's fault for why I'm in discord? So awareness is the first step, and it's massive to see what's really happening here. Oh, I see what I'm playing out. This little dance of chaos with my mom recreating itself, my daddy wound recreating in my partnership. There's just so many dynamics in human relating. So awareness is the first step. And then there's so many therapeutic techniques that we can do to retrain the brain and to create a new future. And I do outline many of these techniques and tools in the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And I'm also on that similar thread. I'm curious about your experience with hypnosis. Do you have any personal experiences and stories, or well, I guess it wouldn't be personal. It'd be more like stories where you've had a client with a breakthrough or some sort of... I've never tried it myself, and I think that I'll just give you a little bit of background context. I've tried some things like EMDR, for example. I've tried some tapping to tap that. I guess it would be more like a theta brainwave in a therapeutic setting. And for me, what happens usually is, because in those situations, there's a lot of fear over letting go of control, that I might find out something that will be too scary to process, that I won't be able to handle the information that I get. It feels like, to me, what happens is I'm blocking myself from allowing myself to access that out of fear, out of trying to protect myself, right? So there's always that, our judge serves a purpose, our controller serves a purpose to protect us, right? To the point when it no longer serves us, and then hopefully we can get some help and work through that. So I'm just curious, I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, do you have to be relaxed enough to allow the hypnosis to take place? And number two, are there any personal experiences with hypnosis that you wouldn't mind sharing, if you don't mind?
Oh my gosh, I love this question, because this is a huge part of my work. In fact, the Dare to Prosper Challenge, we just had 4,000 women graduate literally a week ago. And if you're curious to see the daretoprosperchallenge.com, And over 7,000 women have gone through this meditation process with me. It's badass because things can happen quickly. And I'm a very practical and efficient person. So I want to see results around me and I want to see things change. So I started studying with a mentor who taught me hypnosis. He's super underground. English was a second language, from Mexico. I found him in a bookstore and realized he had this whole just massive library of knowledge. And I started transcribing him and basically being that student that shows up to the crazy scientist and is like, we're going to put some order into this. He was just doing like intuitive reading sessions for $25 for a half an hour. And when I discovered him, I was like, oh, we're going to go far together. So we did 6 years and I helped him have a multi-six-figure launch, creating his training platform. And he developed a healing center in San Diego. So it was just this perfect student teacher relationship where he gave me all the codes. I gave him all the codes. And we're just, that man in my corner has been monumental because he taught me how to retrain the human psyche in a really powerful way. And I felt like I had to be in so much integrity with this knowledge and wisdom. And I prayed for years, asking Spirit to show me how I was going to use these tools when I started channeling the Dare to Prosper Challenge, a 10-day hypnosis meditation experience for us to go into a hypnotic state, excavate beliefs we have around money to create a new future of prosperity. And I can't even begin to describe the miracles and the magic that happens to people's lives when they're aware of the unconscious patterns of scarcity that are so deep hidden back there in the way mega unconscious mind of things that they're just recreating from their lineage, from society, from culture. And so the process that I do with hypnosis is we go down 7 stairs, we go down an elevator, we go into this psychic healing space. I use all types of metaphor healing, and hypnosis is an opportunity to essentially take a break for your thinking mind and be guided into an experience. And so I take the alpha leader position and I'm snapping and I'm commanding certain things. I'm like, you will feel this now. And expand your body with the feeling of prosperity. And then we're excavating information. But the coolest thing about hypnosis and why I can be one person leading such a breakthrough experience for thousands of people at a time, it's a deeply personal experience. And it's a sacred experience. Not one single person's experience is the same when they're seeing the exact same, cueing the exact same metaphors, and the way their brain is translating that data is massively unique. So one of the metaphors is the prosperity garden. And we take a look at the garden, and it's a metaphor for our current relationship with money. So we look, are there weeds here? What's growing here? So it's just an amazingly effective and practical tool to be able to have a deep healing experience and to get a lot of data into your own unconscious mind.
Oh, it's cool. I feel like, okay, where do I sign up? I'm ready. So this is something that you do online, right? It's not in person at this point, right?
It's not in person. I have visions of it being in person, like doing a multi-day festival for Dare to Prosper, and it is a fully digital experience.
Cool. Okay, cool. We'll definitely link to in the show notes to if there's any future upcoming, or you mentioned like you can look online for what it was like in the past. So I'll definitely link to that in the show notes. One question I really wanted to ask you is, what's an example of a mistake or failure that you experienced, and what did you learn from it?
Oh man, the first thing that comes to mind is my exes.
Yeah.
My exes. Yeah, I made some really interesting choices in dating. I've been single for about 1.5 years, but the previous 5 years was 3 back-to-back relationships. And the biggest failure would be the way that I abandoned myself. And how easy it was for me to just jump ship and like lose sight of my practices and my friend circle, and learn some really hard lessons. And it brought me a really deep feeling of shame and embarrassment, because I lead this life of like, I wrote the book, Empowered, Sexy, and Free. Homegirl's got to make some empowered decisions to walk the talk. And I just didn't feel congruent. I'm like, Oh my gosh, I'm in such a chaotic relationship. And I dated a few people with tempers, and it was just very jarring for me. And I got to see where I just wasn't owning my value and was allowing a lot of chaos to happen in my personal life that was taking me off my professional life big time.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so last question, and this I'll preface it with, a personal statement or mantra, a quote, if you will, that I often return to and ask myself, if not daily, yearly, or quarterly, or monthly, whatever, whenever I think about it. Huge fan of quotes and mantras. So, and this is from an excerpt from one of my favorite poems by Mary Oliver, and that is, "Tell me, what is it you will do with your one wild and precious life?" And so the specific question is, in the book, you talk about us all having a legacy based on how we lived and what we have done. What do you want your legacy to be?
I love this question. It was such a beautiful setup. Thank you for that. Just really thoughtful setup. Mine's simple. It's a legacy of love. How much did I create, and how many humans were impacted by my love and my care? It's just such a deep sense of fulfillment for me to show others my love through my wisdom and what I've learned in life, and how I've created just the massively successful business and the highly organized business that I've created. Paying my multi 5-figure tax bills, investing in real estate, impacting thousands of women a year. It was literally once a pipe dream for me, and it's a dream come true. And I've stayed rooted in that heart of service, even when the details get so big sometimes and I get tested. I come back to, this is one of the greatest sources of love in my life. And now I'm not in relationship and partnership, and I'm not a mom yet. So this is really where I get to channel a lot of my time and energy and love. And at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, and I'm taking my last few breaths in this particular body and this go around, I believe that I will be most proud of the way I loved so openly.
That's so beautiful. Jolie, it's been such an honor. And, I really meant what I said at the beginning. I've been looking forward to this conversation for many months. And so thank you so much for showing up today, for sharing your story, for sharing your love, your wisdom. We appreciate you. And where can people go to find you, to follow you, and just be in your circle?
Okay, so if you think I'm interesting and you want to read more about my story, I have some really, really juicy, deep stories about my life in this book, Empowered, Sexy, and Free. It's sold on Amazon.com and Target.com, Empowered, Sexy, and Free. And if you want to see more into my personal life, I pretty much chronicle my life daily on Instagram stories at Jolie Dawn XO. And then if the Dare to Prosper challenge sounds interesting to you and you want to meditate for 10 days, I sell the recordings bundle. So the whole live experience I do once per year, but the recordings bundle is just amazing. And that's a really affordable price, under $100, on the website, thedaretoprosperchallenge.com. And then all of my offerings are up to date on joliedawn.com.
We will absolutely make sure that these are all in the show notes and accessible and ready for people to jump on the Jolie Dawn train. Thank you, Jolie. I appreciate you. Well, everyone, that concludes another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned something new, maybe remembered something old, maybe felt inspired to apply something to your life. You can hear my dog in the background. She's doing a little happy dance. So Daisy enjoyed it. Anyhow, I wanted to just pop in here to wrap us up to say a couple of things. Number one, I have such an amazing team that helps me put these podcasts together. Without them, I wouldn't be able to bring these amazing conversations to you. So thank you to my producer, my director of creative services, my sound editor, my engineer, Consistency Media. Don't know what I would do without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the amazing creation and artistic, musical genius Drew Lovern, thank you so much for putting together this music specifically for Outside the Studio. So unique to the show, only place you're ever going to hear it is right here. Thanks, you guys. You make my world go round. Stay well, everyone. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, share on the socials, especially if it's a show that you think, hey, this could help somebody else. That's what this is all about, right? We're sharing information so that we're better, so that we're inspired, so that we're lifting each other up, and we're learning how to be in this world, living on this planet to the best of our ability, sharing information and inspiring one another. And that's my hope. That's my hope for the show. Take care.